How's it going, Makis? Today we're going to take a look at Runescape Mobile Beta. Before we get started, because I know people will ask, if you're in the market for a new phone and you want one that runs Runescape Mobile well, I've put an Amazon link to the phone that I used in the video below. It's a Redmi Note 5 with a Snapdragon 636 processor and 4 GB of RAM. It retails for around $200. Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new to my videos, you can find timestamps for everything that I'll talk about in the description box below, so feel free to skip around to the sections that interest you. Let's get started. The first thing that I want to go over in this video are the settings that are available to you on Runescape Mobile. You can find the settings by clicking on the house icon in the top right hand corner of your screen. Now if it's your first time using the RS Mobile client, you're probably going to want to take a look at the graphics settings. There you will see the power save, recommended, and custom settings. If the game is running sluggish for you, you'd probably want to take a look at disabling some of the options like textures and lowering your FPS. The phone that I'm using for this video has no problem running everything on high detail. I did a little bit of testing with some of the options, changing the FPS, putting some settings to low, putting some settings to high. Using the recommended features gave me pretty much identical performance to the computer. If you're like me and you use full manual when you're doing combat, you're probably going to need to take a second and go over to the combat mode settings and enable revolution. That will give you a bar on the bottom of your screen to automatically cast abilities when you're using mobile. RS Mobile uses an action bar on the bottom of your screen to cast your abilities, while also giving you a second action bar split up in two halves on both sides of your screen. Using the chat function on the game is not as bad as you would expect it to be. All of the options that you need are available to you by clicking on the icons on the left side of your screen, and chatting is about as easy as you could expect, but I generally like to keep this minimized all the way to the corner. Now let's take a look at PvM on RS Mobile. Now one of the first bosses that I wanted to try out was Beastmaster, and I knew that I wanted to try out basing this to see how practical it would be to do raids on the go. Now one of the interesting things about this raid composition was that the backup tank was also using RS Mobile for the first time. I have footage from his phone that I'll use as I'm explaining how this went, and you'll be able to see the difference between our two phones. He used a screen recorder and I was at this time using a camera to record my phone. Now I don't know how much optimization took place for this, if anything at all, but I can say that running with 10 people wasn't actually as bad as I thought it would be. There wasn't any stuttering or lag. Mostly the only things that I had problems with were navigating menus. Now the clip that you're seeing on screen right now is actually the second time that we ran this. The first time we had to bail out because my screen crashed and logged me out when I tried to open up my defensive ability tab. For a job like basing where you don't need access to too many abilities, I didn't find that the ability bar situation that we have on mobile was limiting me at all. It definitely was in other bosses that I was doing, but for this one where you only need access to a couple of abilities, your food and prayer switches, it wasn't that big of a problem. I will say that one of the most difficult things about this was accessing the ability bar on the bottom when I wanted to manually key in a specific ability. It's kind of more of a hassle than it's worth, so I kind of let Revolution take part and used only the abilities on this side. Maybe it would be worth it to just use your thresholds on the left and right side, but I think that we would need access to more ability bars than we have right now. This next part might not be a problem for you if you have access to something like a stylus, but moving around is a little bit difficult when you're doing something like PvM where there's multiple things that you could click on at any given time. Because your clicking radius is so large, when you want to click on a tile, you could end up clicking on a monster and start doing combat with that monster instead of moving like you want to do. There was one mistake that happened during this fight. I think one person died, but we were definitely excited to finally get this kill with two people basing and backing up with mobile for the first time.
Oh yeah, bitches, nice! Woo!
This was before I decided that I was going to be recording anything, so I tried out Telos at 0% enrage just to see how difficult it would be, and I was actually pretty surprised to find that it was relatively easy. Another boss that I went to go take a look at was AOD, and this is the first time that I saw any kind of performance dips. Now this might be because of the amount of effects that are going off from all of the people inside this raid and the boss mechanics, but it did dip a little bit. I don't know if that's because I was using high settings or I was recording at the same time on the phone, but it was a noticeable dip in FPS while I was doing this encounter. I would say that this boss is probably one of the best tests for mobile because of the fact that there's a lot of movement involved and a lot of mechanics that you have to obey correctly. Now there were a few things that did go wrong in this kill. I forgot to have an overload inside my inventory, so there became a point in this fight where I had minus 40 stats and everything. I did get targeted with the bomb twice, and that's where I thought that I would die, if anything at all, because that involves a lot of moving out of the way and placing the bomb correctly. I also wasn't really aware of where it was at that time because I wasn't paying attention of where the bomb should be dropped, so I kind of just guessed and found one in the corner. Once I did my first bomb, I was like, okay, the rest of the fight is going to be super easy. I'm going to have no problems. I'm just going to safe up. And then I got targeted with the second bomb, and I was like, shit, I'm definitely going to go down with this ship real fast. If somebody notices that somebody gets red barred, that one's going to be me. So when I came over here to path around the side, you can see that I'm basically screwed at this point because there's not many places that I can walk to. And this wouldn't be a problem on the actual PC because you can get out of this really quickly. But with the lag from all the animations, I can take that 3k hit that I would have been able to avoid. And at this point, I got into a situation where my prayer had dropped and I needed to open up the tab and switch back to magic prayer. So I'm taking some really big hits. And I also don't have a prayer potion. So my stats are minus 40. I don't have a prayer potion. I don't have an overload, and at this point I'm just like, I gotta live for the rest of this, so I just ate up food for the rest of the time that I was in this kill, just to stay alive. Now something that I actually would like to have an option for on mobile is an option to remove some of the spell effects that you can see in this encounter. I believe that those are going to have a huge impact on some of the lower range phones that are not going to be able to do this encounter as well as I was able to. And for the last boss that I went to review, I checked out Nex, and this is the first encounter that I had any kind of technical problem with. For those of you that don't know, Nex enters her blood phase at the end of phase 2, and in that phase you don't want to have any kind of bleeds on her because they will heal her. Now as you can see on the bottom, my bar does have bleeds on it, and that's because when I do this boss, I tend to always have full manual on so that way I can use the abilities that I need to when I need to use them. From what I can tell, there's no way to get that bar on the bottom of your screen without Revolution being on, so for this point in the fight, I kind of just stopped DPSing and just stood to the side and let my partner take care of the rest of this phase. I could have solved this problem by moving my bleeds to the left and right action bars, but I would rather an option of being able to use the bar on the bottom at a slightly bigger size on full manual so that way this encounter doesn't require you to move around any of your action bars. After you get past the blood phase, there's nothing that really presents you any kind of technical issues, so it's just DPSing the rest of the encounter and making sure that you are switching prayers accordingly. The single biggest challenge that I think that Jagex needs to overcome is the ability to make more of your UI available to you for customization, so that way you can use more of your abilities on separate bars. The biggest use case that I think people will have for mobile is 2 skill. So I took a look at a couple of skills to do this next part of the video. The skills that I chose to do in this part of the review were things that don't require too much interaction, or when they do require interaction, they benefit from having a touchscreen. Something like safe cracking is actually really nice to do on mobile because all you're listening for is an audio cue, so you can put your finger over the safe and look away, and when you hear the sound, just click on it. I did notice from doing this test that after you hear the audio cue on the mobile client, you have a little bit more time than you do than when you're using the client on your computer to click the safe and then have a chance to unlock one of the stages. I'm not sure what caused this to happen, but it is nice when you're playing mobile to have a little bit more time to react to or click on things on your screen. The next thing that I went to go test out, I do think benefits from having the touchscreen, which is the frenzy fishing in the deep sea fishing area. For those of you that are not aware, this fishing requires you to constantly click on changing pools of water in the ocean. Because of the screen size in relation to your hand and how you can easily move from one side of the screen to the other with a small movement, this type of skilling actually benefits from a touchscreen versus using it on the computer. And for those of you that want a little bit of a break, AFKing is as easy as it is on the computer, except you have the ability to bring this wherever you are. Now, I never thought that I would say this, but one of the things that I like to do the most, or that I found the easiest to do, was agility. This was one of the last things that I did before starting to make this video, and I was actually pretty surprised at how well agility worked with the mobile client. Now, as you can see on screen, it's really easy for you to find the spot that you need to click on. You'll either have a yellow circle or a red one. This activity benefits in the same way that fishing does because you can basically cover the whole entire screen with your hand with a very small movement. You can do agility really easily on this client. I'm not sure how many of you are going to want to train agility on the mobile client, but I'm just putting it out there that it's not as bad as I thought it would be. And with that, I want to flip it back over to you. For those of you that have access to the mobile beta, I want you to tell me what you're doing on the mobile, what phone you're using, and what type of performance you're getting from that phone. That's all for this one. Until next time, Taki out.